We don't have, for giving of, for Matan Torah, for giving of the Torah, we don't have a date. It is not written anywhere. An exact date. What day and what month it was. We have just a notion about the month, but not about the day. It is not. We can figure out, and that is what the rabbis did, and they had all kinds of differences about the actual date of Matan Torah, when it was historically, but anyway, it is about this time. And to go in a way more into it, the Shavuot has also the distinction of being a holiday that doesn't have in itself any fixed date. It is just a day. The holiday is made by counting 50 days from the second day of Passover, which means that theoretically speaking, the holiday of Shavuot could happen in more than one date. See, now when we have a fixed calendar, Shavuot is always in Vav Sivan. I think the times when the calendar wasn't fixed, but it was fixed by direct sighting of the moon, the new moon, so Shavuot could happen either in Hey B'Sivan, Vav B'Sivan, or Zayin B'Sivan. That all this was possible, even though, again, with the calendar today, it is a fixed date, but the day is not said. The Torah doesn't say that in the 6th day of the month of Sivan you should have the holiday of Shavuot. It just, you count 50 days after Passover and there you have Shavuot. That is the way it is. So from that sense, it's also an unusual holiday. Unusual in that it doesn't have a date and it doesn't seem to have a reason. But as I say, traditionally, historically, the holiday of Shavuot is Zman Matan Toratenu, the time of giving of the Torah. And so I'm going to speak about this aspect, and not about, say, the special sacrifices, or the counting, or even the connection, which is important between, say, Passover and Shavuot in the inner sense of these two holidays that are interconnected. So let me just put it. It's a statement that is attributed, again, not written properly. It's attributed to the Rebbe of Kotsk, and he said, "We have a date, a holiday for receiving the Torah, for being given the Torah, Matan Torah. We do not have a date for receiving the Torah, because giving of the Torah was a one-time event. Receiving the Torah is something that happens with people individually. Some people may receive the Torah when they are 5 years old. Some people will receive the Torah when they're 50 years old. And some, unfortunately, die before they receive the Torah. See, just in brackets, I would say, add, I do believe that eventually a person, in due time, will make tshuva. But some people die prematurely. So they don't have enough time to make tshuva. So, but if they would live sometimes another year or another decade, they would do it. Just they died before the proper time. I could tell you stories about it, but that's not my point. My main point is that receiving of the Torah, which is my notion, my conscious understanding, or my feeling of receiving the Torah is a date that happens in my lifetime, and it may happen any time in my lifetime. It may come after a series of years of soul searching, and it may come almost as an afterthought. But that is a distinct notion from giving the Torah. Receiving the Torah is an individual inner experience, which has a matter of consciousness about it, of knowledge, and of course of receiving. I'm receiving something, which is, as I say, for some people it is not even one day. See, there are people that experience that. I'm not going to go into what I call, not psychology in general, not the psychology of religion, but there are some people who have a one-time experience of something like a revelation, what William James called a conversion. But it is not so very common. And if I may add, and you possibly can tell me that it is not true, with my experience with lots of people, I find that Jews are don't have very commonly a conversion experience, which means that the person within, say, a moment, an hour, an experience is converted, born again. So I think it's quite rare among Jews. And I would explain it, but that's not the main point. I'm just saying that I think among Jews it is not a common experience. This experience of, say, I went into the synagogue, or somebody spoke with me, I just looked at the trees, and I had a feeling that is the moment. And as I say, I think it is not common among Jews. Not because Jews are less sensitive, but for other reasons that are connected both with, I would say, with our psyche and with the nature of the Torah. And so together they make it a much more complex experience that sometimes it's not a day of receiving the Torah. Sometimes it's a year of receiving the Torah, and sometimes it's a more than a year, in which there is a prolonged experience that goes on, and in which I feel that I'm receiving, but it is not just one event. So sometimes when a person is asked later on, what was the date, which is surely a holiday, a person should make it as a personal holiday. What was the date for you? Many times, when you try to think it back, you find out that you don't really remember the date. I mean, it was made of very small pieces. For some people, some people had the experience of encountering Jewishness in one way or another for the first time. But it doesn't mean that this first time was such a time of joy and involvement. Sometimes the first meeting with Jews is a feeling of repulsion and of hatred. And then you overcome it with the time. But I'm just speaking about experiences, and these experiences have lots of variations. So I'm saying when a person is asked, can you give me your spiritual birthday? So I don't really know. I can pick up a date and even celebrate it, but sometimes it's not a real date. It could be a date of some great experience, but if I trace it back, I find out that the real beginning was sometimes a year or so, or many years before that, because some people had this experience that they had the initial feeling of being connected, but it doesn't become a full-fledged experience and a notion until months or years later. And then it's very hard to make the connection and to find out to trace back my life. See, some people can trace it back, this way, a childhood experience. For some people it is true that some childhood experience was the real experience that made a beginning. And then there was a long run of forgetting, of some kind of a forgetfulness in which I didn't care. And then another awakening and another awakening until it becomes something substantial. But so I'm saying that to make the distinction, receiving the Torah is an individual experience, which is spread through the more than 3,000 years since giving of the Torah, and it's also in our private lifetime. The special experiences. Let me just add, because I suppose it's still a slightly mixed audience. See, some people are what are called born from. What meaning? They are born within an observant society in which Judaism and Jewishness and keeping the mitzvot is commonplace. But also for these people, there is a time for receiving the Torah. Because you can grow up, not only to be 8 or 9 years old, but even to be 30 years old. And okay, you were within it, but you never have really a receiving of the Torah. The receiving of the Torah happened to you when you became aware of the meaning of it. Before that, it didn't have any special sense. It was a way. It was a way. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you have to remember that for some people, being born and raised in a Jewish environment in which everything is simple. Jewishness is simple. Doesn't mean that you get it from birth. You may grow up and spend many years until you have your personal date in which there is a kind of an awakening. And again, let me just say, I'm not speaking now not about supernatural experiences. I'm not even speaking about something that is overwhelming feeling that here it is. Sometimes it comes like this. Sometimes it is a much more subdued, quiet experience. It comes, and from a certain time on you say, okay, up to this day I was saying certain words. Up to this day I was doing certain things. Now I'm really involved in it. See, some of you possibly had the experience, say, of something which is not so very different, of falling in love. Sometimes it's a game. Rarely it happens just with one look, one sight. Sometimes it takes months, and sometimes it only happened and did happen. But somebody that is, you say, a person that you played with since childhood, but never had any special relationship. And then it happens that you begin to think in a different way. And so it's no longer so this nasty little neighbor from the next house, but it becomes an object of love. But it's an experience. And as I say, the experience sometimes comes, you wake up and you feel it, and sometimes you don't even wake up. And it's not after some time you find more and more, and then you define it. Okay, I am in. The same thing about Jewishness is to be in. The feeling of being in is that is what it's called receiving the Torah, which is, it is no longer a matter of a social structure or a way of saying things, but it becomes something meaningful and it is mine. So I'm saying that is the receiving of the Torah. But that's not the holiday. The holiday is giving the Torah. And that is a distinct, different thing, and in some way of a much more, not only general, but also more profound meaning. Now, we have then also to say a few words about what is, it's called the Torah. I mean, again, we can have really many different definitions, which are not mutually exclusive, but they're just different meanings of the same term. But let me just say in one way, and let me go slowly. I won't jump into mysticism, dangerous for the people. So I'm saying Torah means there is a revelation of the truth. The revelation of the truth. That is the Torah. That is the revelation. Now, a revelation which is, it is not something that I come to it by so many easy steps. I can come close to understand more or less what I'm searching. But the revelation of the thing in itself, that is what is called the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah is basically the revelation, which means something which is the truth, the absolute, is being revealed. Being revealed, and we'll speak about it a little bit later, because being revealed doesn't always mean that I understand it. See, being revealed is something is there. See, we don't have many of these things usually in our lifetime, but in that sense, see, there are certain things which I would call, there are things that we build up intellectually. People usually have inventions which are, I'm building up a certain structure. Now, an invention is something that comes basically from me, and it takes steps. It is maybe by jumps, or it may be by very slow, and the systematic, methodical way of doing it. That is one thing. A revelation is that of something that wasn't there for me. It wasn't there. But it is revealed, and now I find out about it. A revelation is, for example, when you find a new continent. That's the revelation. It is not something that I created. There is something there. And I encounter something that is there, that's it. The most important part is it is there. It is there. And I'm given it. And sometimes, like the late Columbus, see, you can discover a new and quite big continent and die after a number of years and not even know that you discovered the continent. So the thing comes, it is there, but what it is, I may discover only later. That is my understanding of what has been revealed. In that sense, Giving the Torah is one thing. That is, you get the package. Now, what you do with it, and how you do with it, and how you unwrap it, and how you delve into it, and how you find out more and more and more about it, that is a different experience, which is not the exact point of the revelation. The revelation, which is basically that something appears in the world, something which is in that sense, in one sense, it's a new thing in the world, and that is revealed, shown to everybody or to some people. It is shown. That is the revelation part of it, which is a very distinctive thing about giving the Torah. Giving the Torah is basically revealing the thing that may be existing from beyond time and above time. But the revelation means that it comes into time, space, and I would say some kind of a human understanding. And that's the important part. The part about the human understanding is important because when it is completely beyond the human understanding, it's not a revelation. It may exist before it, but it is not revealed. The revelation is that when it comes within the grasp in some way of human understanding. And if it is not, then nothing really happened. So that is, giving the Torah is basically the notion, the point of revelation.